Walter Crosby, Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Got a great episode today. I say that a lot, but I'm excited about this guest, David Sullivan. He's a president of an organization that you probably haven't heard of, that does some pretty amazing things with access control for some pretty important buildings around the country. But our conversation is about empowering our employees, about changing the culture, helping our employees be more effective at helping our customers and connecting all those dots. In the book that I wrote, The 7 Critical Mistakes That CEOs Make, David talks about how that we connect our strategy and our vision and help the employees understand what they can do in their role, in their particular unique set of skills to help a customer and to really proliferate that vision and to grow as an individual and help our customers grow and help change the culture. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. Welcome to the program. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
We had a fun conversation. I usually try to do like a pre-interview for about 10, 15 minutes. And it was fun talking to a CEO who's worked his way up through the sales ranks and has that perspective. So I've been kind of looking forward to this conversation because we had some similar ideas about how sales should be run and how they should be managed and what should and shouldn't happen. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I am too as well.
So easy question out of the box. Like, is there a particular book that you gift more often than others to people, or one that you receive more often?
Well, it's funny because there have been a few that have changed my perspective on the way that I manage. More recently, just literally for my next upcoming meeting with my executive management team, I've had them in a mandatory reading of Getting Naked. It's a book about people's approach to consulting services and such, and I think that's a fantastic book for what's applicable to where my business is today. But another one that really transformed my thinking was the Blue Ocean Strategy, which talks about coming up with strategies that take you out of the shark pool with all the blood and you get out into a blue ocean and you establish a direction that perhaps others were not. And there was a time at one of the prior companies that I was the president of where we were in printers. So we were doing printers on plastic. And so for badges typically, but also driver's licenses. And I had come into the business and these guys were talking about building out a big full-scale kind of printing press and such printers so that you could do the credit cards. I said, guys, that's a pool full of a lot of competition. Do we really want to go there? And we focused the business rather on an area where we could all be in the blue ocean. And that helped us a great deal to really build out a strong strategy going forward. So, yeah, I'd say those are probably two books that I look at a lot. That Getting Naked is also the guy who did the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah, Lencioni's books, I think I've read all of them at least once. I've gone through his program to help manage that team where you're working geniuses, right? So we stay in that working genius model, and he's a prolific author and frankly thinker about trying to make not just people more efficient in the workplace, but for them to enjoy the process more. And I don't know, I think I read Getting Naked. The last time I was in Florida, I went through that, and I just couldn't couldn't stop because it really designed for people that are in my space, helping us think about the way we deliver and the way we think about our customers. So those are two great choices. And I think we talked about this once before, but maybe you share a story that talks about something that like a failure that you had or a challenge that you had that you were able to overcome. These are like some of my favorite things that really successful people have run into a big problem and maybe even failed at it and then turned it around and made it a positive.
Well, I think the one that's probably the biggest in my path to where I am today was when I was the CEO of a systems integrator out of Chicago. I had offices one in Washington, D.C., and one in Charleston, South Carolina. And my office in Washington, D.C., I was actually brought into the business by a private equity group to help turn the business around, the overall business. The one in Washington, D.C., it was an acquisition that was made by them separate. It was a bolt-on to the main business. But it had a lot of inherent issues in it. It was the one that was burning through the most cash. And so, after about 6 weeks of being the new CEO, they came in and they said, "What would you do?" And I said, "Well, I would bankrupt this section of the business." They're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 wait, what are you talking about, Dave? Can't you turn this around?" And I said, "Well, I can, but I think a faster resolution would be to do that." So anyway, I said, "All right, I'll help to turn it around." And what ended up happening was I relied very heavily on an individual who was my COO to turn the business around. And I think that I waited too long. I let him make the choices, go forward with, doing the actions. I was coaching through him. But what I hadn't realized is that, one, I wasn't close enough to understanding what was actually happening in the field at that office. I was assuming that he was taking my direction and employing it out the way I like to see it. And the net result was that I had to terminate him. And when I did, I took over the responsibility of getting that office turned around myself. And frankly, it was too late. But I realized that a lot of the actions that I would have wanted to have taken were not being, executed on. Where I would want to have, we were a construction type business, so we're doing projects. And I would have wanted to have a weekly review of the progress associated with each of the progresses or each of the projects, and understand what had been accomplished, what hadn't been accomplished, progress against what we were trying to achieve. And those fundamentals weren't happening. And I'd say that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I made. And from that, I just decided that I would never allow myself, regardless of what position I'm in, to be so remote from the actual activities that are going on in the different parts of the business that you just assume that they are. And while I think at a certain scale it becomes difficult to do that, of course, CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies can't do that. But in a business the size I'm in, 100 million, it is manageable. I can get out there, I can get involved with these different aspects, the key aspects of the business, understand what's going on, and then make sure that the corrective actions are being taken. Now, I can turn them over to have others execute, but I really want to make sure that I'm attuned to what's happening. And I would say that was probably one of the biggest learning that I had there was I had just trusted too much. And, maybe going back to one of our earlier conversations, trust but verify, is a concept that I should have probably been taking.
So whether it's a $1 billion company or $100 million company, that CEO or the person that's running a division, they need for lack of a better term, scorecard to look at what's happening, because sometimes it's difficult to get into the workplace, to get into the field and really understand. But is that a thing that a larger organization can do, is put a scorecard in place to be able to look at certain metrics, or is that not enough in your experience?
Well, my comparable would be, I believe that that's exactly what happens in, I was in Ingersoll Rand, and there was a like a scorecard approach to things. It's a common technology or approach methodology, X matrix, which allows you to cascade objectives down throughout an organization and then measure your performance against that. There's a number of ways that you can do that. So I'd say, yeah, even at a large level organization, they can, and it cascades downward, but then they can roll that upward and be able to review that. But I think when you come to an organization of my size, it's easier. But the way that I've accomplished it is through, a lot of people talk about developing out a business strategy and a business plan connected with that. But I think sometimes what people do is they tend to, put together the strategy and then it sits on the shelf and gathers dust. And you go about your core way of doing things on a daily basis. And there was this consultant that I had come in at one point to help me through a strategy approach. And his approach it was very operational in nature. So the strategy put together were very specific initiatives that became projects. And then within those projects, you had these tactical projects that you could keep track of. And then you'd have a periodic review. And I have my team, I do it exactly that way. I have an outlined strategy that has a series of a number of projects that each of the executives have ownership of. We look at those. They have to update those on a monthly basis, and then we report out on them in a quarterly basis. So while we keep them updated monthly, we actually talk about them as a management team on a quarterly basis and see if we're tracking, determine if they're still relevant, and if there's modifications or things we need to do to the specific initiative that is something that we've learned in the meantime that we make adjustments to, then we do. And for me, that creates a very tangible way to make sure we're moving in the right direction and that we're all on the same page. And then I utilize that same document in a very subset of the whole thing. It's really only like maybe 4 slides in my all hands meeting that I have on a quarterly basis with everyone to say, hey, look, this is the direction we're headed. This is what we've agreed that we're going to do. And this is our progress against it. And when we've accomplished something, I tell everybody we've accomplished this and we celebrate our accomplishments, So, yeah, I absolutely believe in the fact that you have to put together some kind of a battle card, some kind of a measuring stick that says, this is the direction we're going, and keep yourself on it.
Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. You brought up a couple of things there I want to touch on. A playbook that people put up on a shelf and it gets dusty and they sort of forget about it. I'll go into a CEO's office and I'll ask a question that usually gives me that like they kind of cock their head like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you sell something around here? Like, what's your process? And they have no way to articulate it. And I'm like, there's a playbook right there on the shelf, notebook marked sales playbook.
Yeah.
You got a place to start. Oh yeah, we did that a couple of years ago, and it never landed. So I mean, there's some of that has to be carried through. But if you don't have some way to measure what's going on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, and get together and talk about it, I think there's a lot of companies that listen to this podcast that use Gino Wickman's EOS, right, which is a series of those meetings, right? The language is very similar to the intent is very similar to what you described. The language is a little different, right? They have rocks for quarters and scorecard on a weekly basis that we look at and measure. And I think it has to be simple and you have to get the buy-in from the team. But I'm interested in your perspective about how you go about that finding that trust and developing that trust with your key leadership team. Lencioni's got a bunch of ideas around that in his various books. But from a practical point of view, you talked about a story where you probably had a little too much trust in somebody executing, and you learned from that. So, what's the process now that you use to kind of believe uh, that there's trust there and those things are occurring? Is it just the scorecard?
No, I'm a huge believer in empowering the organization. I mean, every employee, and for me, it's really, really important that every employee, including, I have a facility in the UK where we have quite a few people, a factory and everything, and we have janitorial services cleaning that facility. And I want every one of those janitors to understand why they bring value to our customers. So what is it about your job that actually makes us successful? So every person has to connect their role to the happiness of the customer. But that means, to me, having everybody participate, understand what their role is and how they do contribute, participate and have a voice in the process. So when we sat down initially to put together the strategy, it was all of my executives team involvement along with some other next level managers, and we took the ideas that came from all of them and agreed as a group over a 3-day process how these projects would be formed. So it wasn't me saying this is what the project is. It was actually the people putting it together because they felt strongly that this is what we needed to do. Now, I had a very unique situation because I was coming into a situation where the prior manager to me was a very command and control central decision maker and did it all himself. And so when I came in and I start, um, cascading this out, delegating these things out, and involving the people, they were really embracing this, right? Because it was the first time that they had somebody that was coming in and really saying, yeah, I want to hear what you have to say and tell me what we need to do. And so this is, to my mind, in this case, Walter, it was really a grassroots strategy. And so for everybody's buy-in, it was theirs. It wasn't mine, right? Now I guided it and brought it into directions that I thought it needed to go, but in essence it's theirs, and they were the ones who came up with it. And so from that perspective, that's how I got the buy-in.
So I mean, there's a pops to mind with the book that was written about Alan Mulally when he was at Ford, and it took him months and months when he would do his big meetings in that main conference room in the glass house, that people didn't believe him, that he wanted red, yellow, green, right? That was his sort of his way of looking at it. Are we on track for this? And should we be, is there a problem coming, or is it way off track? And he would try to convince them that if it was a big problem, that it was fine to bring it up. This was the room to discuss it, to try to solve it. And it took Fields to step in and drop his drawers and say, yes, this is a problem. And then everybody else started to buy in. And what you're saying is giving that empowerment, which we talked about before, that empowerment, align your strategy and help them see how they, in their role, they can make a difference for the customer, because that's what it's all about. And is that kind of summarize
No,
it?
it does, but I'm going to admit to you that it's not perfect, right? Because I'm seeing that, I've tried to create this environment, and yes, all these executives are owning their part of it. The cross-functional elements to what I think needs to be resolved, they're not taking those actions themselves. In fact, they're coming to me and complaining about the other guys not getting that done, et cetera. And I said, well, if you talk to your peer, that's what we're here for. We should be working together as a single team to solve these problems, And so candidly, I'm now a little over a year into this job, and in 2 weeks, I'm having a very wide open meeting where I'm going to try to facilitate a wrestling match between everybody to say, you guys got to get this solved because you keep talking to me about all these issues, but you're not fixing them yourself. And so we're going to come into the room and we're going to do so. And I've been coaching each guy, and my hope is that they will be as open as they are with me with their peer group, because I've told, and I'm going to set the stage just as you say there. You have to feel safe enough that, one, it's not going to come back against you from me, which I think they do trust that, but I'm not sure that they trust yet that they can be that open with their peers and have that same openness of response. So I want to try to create that environment so that we all collectively, as you just described, trust each other, that we can set our egos at the door. We can be all completely open with each other. We're not going to hold grudges against each other. We're going to just work to solve that. If I can achieve that, then I feel like I've been successful. Now that's going to be that's an idealistic approach. We'll see what happens.
Well, but I mean, I don't know if it's idealistic. I mean, we're humans, right? So there's never going to be perfection. There's always going to be that those some of those issues in the room, especially when you have high level folks, battling out for share of the um, of the right solution and protecting their turf. But it's almost like they have to buy into what Lencioni talks about, is that everybody has to be heard and their ideas put forth, and that where as leaders we need to be able to see that room where somebody might not be participating and pull them into the conversation. And sometimes you literally have to pull them into the conversation to do that. I think that's the right goal to get to where you're going.
Well,
it changes people, right? That's
if you take Lencioni, like you talked about, in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and you go back to that book, and I literally at one point in a prior company that I was a president of a small animal ID company, we went through. I bought his facilitators book to run through an internal workshop for that thing.
Yep.
And part of that was you needed to go through the Myers-Briggs, understand what your personality was and all your partners' personalities. And there was a section in the facilitation there where you would, talk to the group about your personality and how it matched up, what you thought were dead accurate, what you thought might be misconceptions, whatever. And you went through that. And it was really interesting to see the dynamics between the managers at the table, because they said, wow, I've worked with you, not me, but some of their colleagues. I've worked with you for 20 years and I never knew that. I never really looked at it that way. And it really helps me to understand how and why you're responding to that thing. So Lencioni really does have that accurate. I don't know if I go through that same facilitation again, because I'm not sure it scales with what I'm dealing with, but he has a lot of really great philosophies that I've incorporated throughout the years.
Yeah. I mean, everybody, I don't think anything can be pulled in completely, and there has to be bits and pieces of things. I mean, I work for a small manufacturer of fire alarm systems, and we took a personality assessment that's very much like DISC, but just it's DISC on the side with a different perspective. And it helped me. Like, everybody had to take it, and we were sitting in a conference room, and we went around the leadership table. He asked everybody the question, and he bypassed one of the key people that ran the R&D department. And after the meeting, I'm like, dude, why did you not ask Mike the question? He's like, you didn't look at his profile? I'm like, no. So we went and got the book, and we pulled out his profile, and he pointed out, much like the Myers-Briggs scenario, that he's willing to give us his interpretation. He's willing to give everything that he has on the topic, but he needs time to not facilitate, but to contemplate the answer. Where me, I'll give him my answer off the top of my head, right? And then I might come back to him later and say, hey, I added this to it. This guy needed the time to do that. So if the boss didn't have the time to give him that question in advance so that he could be prepared, he would bypass. And it really, once I understood it, it helped me understand how to talk to the guy. It helped me understand how to get what I wanted out of it. So, but I think there's lots of ways to peel back that onion to get there, but it really helps.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you said that. It really made me think because one of the things that I've done, and maybe it addresses some of this. I'm a guy that really believes in getting the information, as much of the information for the meeting that we're about to have, to the team in advance. So, colleagues, peers, I want you all to be able to get all your work done and send it in. You guys take the time to read through it so that you come to the meeting prepared and all those different discussions. Same as I do with my boss, right? The CEO of Allied Universal. I make sure that I get anything to him well in advance so that by the time I get there, he's not caught by surprise and he can ask the questions he want to ask. I think there's a tremendous amount of value in getting that in there because then a person like that can think about it, get prepared for it. I know they can't give answers to everything because things happen during the meeting, but it certainly makes them better prepared. And I do think that I can tell for some people it makes them uncomfortable to think that they have to put everything out there in advance because they might be putting something controversial in front of others and they might be nervous and say, well, I want to introduce this with, a preface or whatever. I think just that you made me think that maybe some of that is very helpful in that regard. I don't know.
Well, for me, what it did was it allowed me to understand how his brain worked and how to communicate with him. But when I ask for information or I give information to my clients in advance of a quarterly meeting, this is what we know today, and then once everybody's in the room, we can talk through those ideas. So sharing the information in advance is helpful if you help everyone understand that there's some other things that are going to come out of this. There'll be some nuance that we talk through. It'll trigger something in somebody else to add some value or to bring another perspective that really opens up the conversation. So could it be negative? Sure. Anything could be negative, but more than likely what happens if we have the right participation and a certain level of respect and trust, at least rapport, that's going to open up the conversation and things will go faster because we've had time to contemplate. But you do have to come with an open mind.
Sure.
And that's sometimes a challenge in and of itself.
Well, I have to try to, as the president, I have to try to sit back and let others process and communicate without me always jumping in too. That's a hard thing to do.
It is, right? What do you just bite your tongue? How do you?
Well, literally, I use a very physical decision, which is I squeeze my pen in my hand and just say, "Shut up, Dave."
You ever broken a pen?
No, I haven't done it. No, it's not that firm.
But there has to be something that we do to remind ourselves, because I have that. If I'm coaching a salesperson, I've had to learn to not give them the answer, to help guide them through with a series of questions to get them to discover it for themselves.
No kidding. Well, it's so funny because I was a successful salesperson, but I had a boss who actually is one of my good friends to this day. And I always would give him a hard time because I said, you're such a bad boss because always, if the thing's falling apart, you start to take over and try to close the deal. And sometimes you don't know that what I'm trying to do is let the client figure out for themselves so I can get them to close the deal themselves, and so look, it's the hardest thing, I know, because I've done it myself. You're doing a ride along with somebody you're trying to develop, and you're so anxious to try to make sure the sale happens that you want to jump in and get it done, but you have to let them make the mistakes, and that's a real challenge.
It's one of the things as a sales manager is ill prepared for, because when we've usually become a sales manager because we were a good salesperson or a great salesperson, and the leader thinks that qualifies you to be a manager, and they're mutually exclusive skills, as you well know, and it's being the hero is what I call it. To go out and save the day, but that it doesn't allow you to grow your team, whether it's sales or anybody else on your team. If you help them get better, that's part of the joy of that role, is to watch people grow and develop and be able to figure those things out for themselves, right? You're helping them, you're guiding them, you're coaching them. It's really it can be a simple process, but it takes that squeezing of that pen or biting of your lip, right? To take that patience, because I never had it as a kid. I just was never patient. I just kind of
No, I think most of us who came up in sales are not the kids that were sitting in the back of the rooms not talking. I think I think that I make the comparison to a sports coach, which is you go to learn golf. You may be a good golfer, but you have to understand the methodology that makes you a good golfer. You have to understand the mechanics of the swing. You have to break it down. But then not only do you have to be able to break it down and understand it, you have to be able to communicate it to somebody who's taking a lesson from you and observe what they're doing and be able to capture it and say, hey, you're not doing this part of the swing the way you should be doing it, etc. That's a talent not everybody has. I mean, the obvious things that everybody always tells you when you're swinging a golf club, oh, you lifted your head or whatever. Yeah, I got that. But there was something else there that I did that caused me to do that. And a good teacher can show you that. No different in being a good sales leader. A good sales leader understands the method and the process that they follow and want to see a salesperson follow to be successful in their opportunities. And you need to be able to identify that, be able to then convey that in a way that's understood by the salesperson so that they can develop and adopt it into their style, because every salesperson has to have their own style. But without the basic fundamentals and understanding of the fundamentals, it's a challenge for them. And a lot of us, I know it was me, before I identified what those fundamentals were and how I was being successful, I was just like, well, I'm good at relationships and I got this, But there was a distinct way that I was approaching it that I later figured out and then was able to coach.
And that's one of the things that when I engage with a new client, that was the salesperson, that was the person that was out there, right? And they've sort of tried to get out of the sales seat. I'm like, you have the process and you have the methodology in your head. And what I need to do is be able to pull out those little pieces, right? Put in my, I have a process and a methodology, but there's some nuance there that person has. So we just pull that out of them and lay that onto the sales team. And it takes time, but if you pull the right levers, they start to see, oh, if I say that first and then that, then it opens up. Or if I have a little bit more patience in the process, I can go faster. It's fun to walk through that, and I can explain that to a to a leader and say, hey, this is what's going to happen, and they're going to struggle at this point, and they're going to struggle at this point, but this is where that nuance is, right? And we need you to help put those words in there, to what you did naturally, what you did without thinking, right? And then we can layer that on top of this, and then they take off. It's magic, because they don't realize it, right? They don't realize how good they are. They're just naturals at following this process. It's part of the fun to sit back and watch and then see who can do it. And you can usually tell the salespeople that are going to be open to changing their approach. Be authentic. Be who you are, but play all the notes in the right order, and everybody can win.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of what makes sales a lot of fun. I kind of want to wrap up with, is there some professional win, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an award or a particular role, but is there something that you're particularly proud of in, how you've led teams and grown teams?
Yeah, I'd say probably my biggest accomplishment in terms of what I'm proud of has to be in I was in the prior company to this. I was based in Dublin, Ireland, and I had responsibilities for a team throughout basically anything outside of the U.S. and Canada. And I had this belief building on what I talked about strategy and everything. A core element of it, an imperative of anything that I do, is a continuous improvement mindset. We hear it in lean manufacturing principles, et cetera, and Six Sigma and everything. But the bottom line is that I feel strongly that we can always improve no matter what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture has to happen throughout the whole of the organization. And I had built this model that allowed people to come forward and participate in with their own voice on ways in which we could improve. And initially, everybody didn't trust that. Oh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to make this more efficient. They won't need me anymore. But once we got past that point, and people started to trust that we were truly seeking to improve the process, we really had huge participation, and it became a culture of continuous improvement. And in that year, we went from 85 million euros to 115 million euros, which was an astonishing growth curve for the company prior to that. But more importantly was when we got our ISO 9001 audit, when the auditor came in, he came into my office and he sat down and he said, "This is a benchmark of a continuous improvement culture." He goes, "Everybody in this company is participating in ways in which they can improve the business. And you have accomplished getting people actively participating in doing this and improving the company, and they're all having fun doing it." And so that, to me, I was surprised by that. I said, "Wow, I didn't go out to try to accomplish to be a benchmark. I just went out to try to make this a great place to work and serve the customers as best we could." And as a result, we ended up with this fantastic result. Now, it took 4 years to get there. It wasn't an overnight success, but that in my history was probably the greatest accomplishment. And what you gain from that is those results. That's, to me, the frosting on the cake. Whereas a lot of people are trying to get the results and not understanding how, if you do the first part of it, you get a fantastic result as a result of that.
Well, again, it's having some patience to realize that it's going to take some time to bring everybody along. But there's a bunch of wins there, right? The company wins with revenue growth. You win with retention of your employees because they're happier and feeling valued and feel like they're providing value. It helps you weed out the folks that don't give a shit.
No doubt. It created a transparent culture to the people that weren't performing or didn't give a shit. Well, they were suddenly exposed, and they either chose to leave or we, changed their career direction.
Sure. And that's not only happening with the management, but it's happening with their peers. Like, you need to step up, dude. Like, this is
exactly. We're all here working together. What are you doing?
Right. And that's how I think that's the culture has changed when you start to recognize that it's happening in the warehouse, it's happening in the manufacturing area, it's happening in finance. Everybody's trying to double check each other's work or make whatever the particular issue is.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes patience. Is there another lever there that you think is important for somebody who's trying to get there, of that continuous improvement?
Well, I go back to all of that I've talked about, that empowerment and involving people and making them trust that you're not going to go out there to terminate their jobs. And, and that patience that you have with that, because the initial step might be, oh, you know what, we just made it more efficient, so maybe we don't need that head. But what the end result was, we didn't make that choice and we went forward. And everybody became more and more able to do the job as we grew that rapid growth. So that rapid growth that we got, which was insanely fast for us as an organization, came from all that we did, but then we didn't have to hire more people. We were just more efficient, and
Yeah.
we were able to support that growth with really, we had a few people, but we didn't have to do a massive hire where you'd think, all right, 20+% growth, you got to add about 20% people. No, we didn't. We were able to do it with the same amount of people because we were so efficient with it. And the people didn't stress out now as a result of it, because as it grew, they were still participating in ways in which we could improve. And
Yeah.
so it was a natural process, and the end result there is really customers can see sincerely that your employees enjoy their job, believe in their company, and as a result, they start to naturally, as you said earlier, we're all human beings. They can see, hey, this is a good company. I want to buy product from them.
Yeah. It shows through to the customer. Just little things. I was a company that I like working with. I called to speak to the person I needed to talk to get something approved, and the lady was like, "Yeah, hold on, let me go see if I can find her." She comes back and tells me, "Oh yeah, Linda's at lunch. She'll call you back when she's done." And it seems like a silly little thing, but if she had just phrased that like, "Oh, she left for lunch. I'll let her know as soon as she gets back. I'll have her call you." Right? It didn't make me. That would have made me feel like, okay, she's at lunch. I'll catch her later. But this felt like she made a choice that her lunch or sandwich, whatever the hell it was more important than having a conversation with me. And it was just a turn of phrase from an admin, right? And she didn't mean anything by it. But that, I think that part of that culture, when everybody's, trying to pull the wagon in the same direction, that naturally comes out to protect
Well,
the
and
customer.
I would maybe even go one step further there, Walter. That you're right, but then what could happen, I'm not saying with every employee, but what started to happen within that company I was a part of, that assistant would be sitting there and going, is there something that I can help you with? Or can maybe let me understand what you're doing and I'll help you to get to the right person. Because everybody was involved in the business, they understood more about how they could solve the customer's problem. She's at lunch. What are you seeking? Oh, you know what? Bob Jones can help you over here.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. And it's really about taking care of the customer, because those are the people that are paying the bills. Those are the people that we need to come back on a regular basis. And it seems like a trivial thing, but I'm always looking, like when I go out to dinner, or I go out to a business to buy something. It's I'm evaluating how they think, and I try to get salespeople to think differently, and to think about the business, not just the transaction, and to think about some adding some business acumen to their world, to understand what's really important to the people they serve. And it goes beyond messaging. It's more about a mindset and that culture. And I think it works all the way through. It's a thread that's really important, and difficult to maintain. And there's always going to be challenges because we're human. But I ended up talking to the person I needed to talk to. I said, look, this is what was said. No big deal. But if she had said it the other way, it would have been it would have made me feel better. And she's like,
well,
yeah.
we're getting to the end of our time, but I'll tell you one thing that I realized. It was an aha moment for me that really has changed the game for me in the prior company and now with the company I'm in. I had this moment of, there's a component that was a part of the system. Now, you could choose as a buyer to buy that component from us, or you could go buy it from a third party. And I said, well, why aren't we getting our customer service people to, would you like fries with that? And and then all of a sudden I came to this conclusion. I said, why do I assume that they understand that component is a part of the system? Why do I assume just because they sit at that desk that they get it? And so we created this whole training program, and it's in 20-minute segments on a weekly basis, twice a week. So people who can't make it for the first one could go to the second one. Made it 20 minutes so that the attention span of people only lasts about 20 minutes, but also they're not away from their daily work that much. And
Right.
if it was something that was an hour-long class, then we would break it into 3 parts. The whole
Sure.
point was we started to talk about, let's talk about our business. Let's talk about our customers. Let's talk about our products. We broke all these different elements in. Let's talk about our industry. Where do we sit in the industry? Where do our customers sit in the industry? How do they do business? What differentiates our customers? It became an endless flow of ideas of what we could do to train the staff. But we did it, and the attendance was like 3/4 of the company, not mandatory, just did it on their own. They wanted to see, and they could select from whatever the curriculum was for that week, whether or not they wanted to or not. And we had a high level of people that were attending these things. And the big thing resulted from they all had confidence in understanding our business and could then ask, how about fries with that?
Hmm. Yeah, because we give them the information that they needed to connect the dots,
Exactly.
and that's one of the many responsibilities of a leader to empower their staff, empower their employees. So, I was excited about this because we had talked about empowerment, we had talked about your philosophies, and it did not disappoint, David. I really appreciate the insights. Is there anything you want to say about your company or ways to engage that would be helpful to you?
We humble access control manufacturer. We manufacture access control systems. Not a lot of people know what that is. They're known to people that they're the card and reader door that go into buildings. And I'm proud to be a part of AMAG Technologies. Hey, I'm proud to be a part of your podcast. Thank you for inviting me. I hope some people gain something from it.
Oh, I think there's a lot of value here. I'm excited to share this, and I think access control. You explained it pretty well once before, where you're helping people navigate a facility and going where they should go, and stopping them from going where they shouldn't go. And you've got you know some pretty impressive customers. So thank you again, and good luck with your meeting in a couple of weeks with your team. Thanks.
Thank you.
I love sharing secrets when I figure them out. That's why I created this program called Sales Hiring Secrets. Early in my sales management career, I was terrible at hiring salespeople. They failed more often than not. Then I discovered the secret that you can't hire salespeople the same way you hire everyone else. That's why everyone fails. In Sales Hiring Secrets, I'm going to teach you all of the secrets to understanding what you really need your salesperson to do, how to attract an ideal candidate with a unique job posting. I'll teach you how to save time and money by only interviewing candidates that are a good fit. I'll share the secrets to an interviewing process that ensures success. And the one big secret that everybody gets wrong is how to onboard a good salesperson so they ramp up quickly and stick around. I'm doing the Sales Hiring Secrets program on a monthly basis. You can click the link below to figure out when the next Sales Hiring Secrets program is scheduled, and you can sign up. Click the link below, and you get all the details. And it's designed for you to bring your entire team so you can get everybody up to speed quickly. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.